What is up on a Thursday night? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. Crafts and Kickoffs podcast week 5, getting you ready with 5 of the top storylines in the NFL. First question, as always, on a Thursday night, what are we drinking? Tonight I got a Phantom Farms Brewing Red Moon Scotch Ale. Red Moon Scotch Ale from Phantom Farms Brewing. It's a fantastic beer. It's in Cumberland, Rhode Island, so good old Rhode Island. Brewery, Phantom Farms Brewing, so you can check it out. Again, this is the Red Moon Scotch Ale, 6% ABV. And let's start off tonight with a $50 super chat bomb from Terry Grant. Boring old diet Pepsi, Thursday night football. Thank you so much, Terry, for jumping in and sending that super chat to start the show. Welcome everybody into the party. I appreciate that, as I appreciate every single one of you. Chris Chapman jumps in, says, since Marilyn is traveling, yes, Marilyn, a regular of these podcasts, is in Africa. Chris is going to be drinking a Sam Adams. So that's good stuff. My friend Christy down in Virginia Beach says, hey, nerd. I'm still mad at Christy because I'm traveling to Virginia Beach next week. And Christy has decided to not be in Virginia Beach when I go down there. So how dare you, Christy? That's on you. That's not on me. Anonymous. Hi, everyone. Just water for me. Sure, Nick's drink will be more interesting. Yeah, here it is. Red Moon Scotch Ale, 6% ABV from Phantom Farms Brewing. Good stuff. All right. Let's see what else we got here. KJ Bai says, mutiny. I think he's talking about the Patriots. Not going great. Evan Lazar today saying that it's teetering. It's teetering towards a mutiny, towards a bad situation there in that Patriots locker room. Ryan Lee checks in with his drink, Copperberg Strawberry and Lime. So you have it from Ryan. All right, keep telling me what you're drinking. Christy, I see you're sorry. I don't accept your apology. All right, let's start with Mike McDaniel down in Miami. Is Mike McDaniel being exposed? Last year, when we talked about Mike McDaniel, a lot of love for Mike McDaniel down in Miami and what he did with that football team. But I've been saying, until Miami beats good teams consistently or wins in the playoffs, they are who they are. And they seem to me, with McDaniel as the coach so far, pretty soft. As the year goes on, the weather gets colder, they lose to good teams. They got their tuchus handed to them in the playoffs by Kansas City last year. Of course, it's Kansas City, so that's not really an embarrassing thing to go through if you lose to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But there still are a lot of questions about Miami to me. Some people might disagree. Some people might say that Miami's a playoff team. They'll be fine. It's a slow start. Is Mike McDaniel getting exposed right now? They are 1-3 through the first month of the season. I'm not ready to sit here and tell you that McDaniel is getting exposed just yet. I mean, the reality is that Miami's had to have 3 starting quarterbacks in the first 4 games. So 3 different starting quarterbacks for the first 4 games. Any coach would have some issues with that kind of situation. You don't want Skyler out there playing. You don't want Huntley out there playing. You want your guy Tua out there playing. But, of course, we went through it couple weeks ago with Tua Tagovailoa, another concussion. He's on IR. So they're shuffling at quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and kill McDaniel because he's shuffling through quarterbacks right now. I want to see what they look like this weekend with Huntley back out there on Sunday at Gillette Stadium against the Patriots, because what we saw on Monday night was Tyler Huntley was just keeping it safe, and McDaniel was keeping it safe. There wasn't much exotic going on with the offense. So we'll see if that changes this weekend. It was a stripped-down attack, but it goes beyond the run game. I mean, it goes beyond the quarterback situation for Miami. You also look at the run game. McDaniel, much heralded guy when it comes to ripping off chunks of yardage in the run game. Miami is based off the run, much like San Francisco is based off the run, much like the LA Rams. A lot of those coaches, right? McDaniel, McVay, Shanahan, all from the same kind of tree. They love running the football. And Miami has not been able to run the football this year. They've had a terrible run game. They've been bad in the red zone, And McDaniel's having some issues with that cheat motion. Remember last year, the cheat motion debuted, right? Guys were running as the ball was snapped. And I know many coaches, especially Bill Belichick, was irate over that cheat motion. He thought it was BS. He thought the Dolphins and other teams, because McDaniel was the first guy to throw that out there, he thought that Miami and other teams were cheating. Guys were in motion at the snap of the football going upfield. And the NFL has addressed that. And they've made it much more difficult to run that motion. And on Monday night, Miami did not just get one illegal shift penalty. They got 5 illegal shift penalties called on them. And I believe there were 3 illegal shifts called on one drive after the Dolphins had driven the ball down the field a little bit. So they're having issues with that cheat motion. They're not using it efficiently. Tyreek Hill is frustrated. He's not going to get traded, I don't think, but he's frustrated. He's not happy. They've just lost Jalen Phillips to a knee injury, so he's done for the year. And so now for Miami, look, the Patriots are this week, and the Patriots have been one of the worst teams in football the last 2 weeks. So this could be a turning point for the Dolphins. They have to figure it out without Tua Tagovailoa. And, of course, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Tua might not be there for the rest of the year. So this is on McDaniel. It's a tough hand to be dealt at quarterback, but you still have Hill. You still have Waddle. You still have that stable of running backs that you have. You've got to figure it out. The offensive line, not very good, but you've got to figure it out. If McDaniels is a great play caller, he's going to prove it. I mean, look what Matt LaFleur did with Malik Willis when Jordan Love was out. Willis played his best football. Everybody, including myself, we weren't sold that Willis could be an NFL quarterback. But LaFleur made the most of it. So now McDaniel has to do the same. All right, I'm going to get to story number 4. Before I do, don't forget to do a few things for us. Take a drink of whatever beverage you have right now. Let me know. Let me know what you're drinking tonight. I've got the Red Moon Scotch Ale. But also do a few things for me. Doesn't cost you any money. Doesn't take much time. Just click that thumbs up. You're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up. If you're watching on Twitter, like the video. If you're watching on Facebook, like the video. Let's build this community. Let's continue to pick up the momentum. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Subscriptions are jumping lately, which is good. We're trying to get to 4,500. We are now at almost, 4,350. So we're nearing that mark. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Pods, don't forget to rate and review. All right, let's see what you guys are drinking tonight. Mark Foster, English breakfast tea, LOL. All right, not going to hate it. Not a big tea guy, but not going to hate it. My friend Amy, hello, Cattle's crew. Boring sips tonight. Clear, sparkling summer peach bubbly water. It's not the Amy I know. That is not the Amy I know. Charlie jumps in. This is a pretty good beer if you're hanging out, just, at the bar, chilling. Charlie, Allagash White. So Allagash White's going. KJ Bai says he's drinking good old-fashioned milk, but then he gave me the laugh cry emoji. So is he really drinking milk? Is he really? And then we got a $5 super chat from our friends at After the Huddle. Long time no talk, buddy. Yeah, where you been? If we decide to part ways with Van Pelt, who would you rather have as OC, McDaniels or Daboll? Thoughts on the locker room issues? I would say Brian Daboll. And I say Brian Daboll because think about the comparison that was made before Drake May was drafted, when Drake May was drafted, who was interested in Drake May. It was Daboll. It was the Giants to go along with the Vikings. And so if you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator, it would make a lot of sense if they do make that move. We're only a quarter through the season. Van Pelt's been bad, but maybe he gets better. But if he doesn't, and they say goodbye to him, I'd be looking at Daboll because of that experience with Josh Allen up in Buffalo. Similar type of quarterback. And I think Daboll can get a lot out of Drake May. As far as the locker room issues, talked about it on the Patriots podcast I do, the Nick Cattle Show, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Talked about it yesterday. And Mayo has to make sure that guys get back on the rails. I was happy to see Pop Douglas apologize for his frustration and showing the frustration visibly on the field. He apologized for that. Stand-up move by Pop. But they got to get this back on the rails. You know, guys doing radio interviews are fine, but you don't want guys calling out teammates as selfish, not publicly. Do it behind closed doors. So they have to refocus, and Mayo has to make sure that they're all on the same page. They get back on the rails. They play disciplined football. And I think if they do that, things will settle down a little bit. All right, let's get to story number 4. The Vikings. How about Minnesota? How many of you thought Minnesota was going to be this good? How many of you thought Minnesota was going to be this good when J.J. McCarthy got hurt and we found out he was done for the season? The Vikings, they are arguably the best team in football. Arguably the best team in football right now. They're 4-0. DVOA, that statistic I love to use. The Vikings are the number 1 team in DVOA in the league. And here's the thing. It's not like the Vikings have been beating cupcakes. You look at their schedule. They beat San Francisco. They beat Houston. They beat Green Bay in Green Bay this last Sunday. And those games that you look at, you know, San Francisco, they easily handled the Niners. They easily handled Houston. And they got up big against the Packers. So it's not like they're, you know, eking their way through here. The Vikings are legitimate, and they have a legitimate shot at going 5-0. The Vikings host the Jets this weekend. And we just saw the Jets have one of the worst football performances offensively that I have seen against the Denver Broncos. They somehow lost a game at home when Bo Nix had negative passing yards in the first half. So now the Jets, they've got to travel to Minnesota and play the Vikings, and the Vikings are on a heater. The Vikings are playing great football. Second half last week against Green Bay wasn't great, but they got off to that lead, and they made it count. And here's my question to all of you, and let me know. Throw a comment in. If Sam Darnold continues to play this way, what do you do if you're Minnesota? And I'm not just talking about, you know, this year in 2024. What do you do if you're the Vikings and Sam Darnold continues to play at this rate with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays? You just drafted J.J. McCarthy. What do you do with McCarthy? What do you do with Darnold? Darnold signed a 1-year deal. Do you let Darnold walk as a free agent? Are you that confident that McCarthy, after missing his rookie season due to injury, is going to be able to parachute in next year and be the guy? It's fascinating, right? I mean, I know it's down the road, but Darnold's playing terrific. And if Darnold continues to play terrific and the Vikings continue to win and they get into the playoffs and they make a run, if you win 1 or 2 playoff games, are you really going to sit there and say, we're going to move on from Darnold and go to McCarthy coming off of an injury when he was, you know, the youngest guy in the draft that was taken? Do you really put everything in on McCarthy for 2025? It's going to be fascinating to see how all of that plays out. After a lost season for JJ, super young to begin with, do they franchise Sam Darnold? Interesting question, right? The Vikings are set to have about $75 million in cap space next year, so they'll have money. Do you franchise Darnold? Keep him for a year while you develop McCarthy? Do you try to trade? I mean, if Darnold plays that well, do you actually turn around and try to trade J.J. McCarthy in the offseason? But that's, you know, those are questions for later dates. You know, Brian Flores, he's been really good as defensive coordinator. What does his future look like? You could see Flores get a head coaching job as long as he's not, you know, excommunicated from the NFL, which the whole lawsuit stuff might be a thing. But the Vikings are playing great football. All right, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. I ask you, what are you drinking? Pros and Jeet, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, says keep Darnold. Keep Darnold. Charlie says you pay the man his money. Ryan Lee agrees. Ryan says keep Darnold and pay him. Wonder what you would do. What would you do if you were Minnesota? I mean, it's early, right? But the hypothetical is, what happens if Sam Darnold continues to cook? What do? You just drafted a quarterback. And, you know, I tweeted out, and it was stupid of me to tweet. somebody called me out for it, and that person was correct for calling me out. I worded it wrong, but I tweeted, was it a mistake to draft J.J. McCarthy? And, of course, the Vikings, I don't think, knew that Darnold would be this good this early. If they did, they probably would not have drafted J.J. McCarthy. The better question is, will they regret drafting McCarthy? Because if Darnold continues to play at this level, you could have used that top 10 pick on somebody else at another position, and now all of a sudden, well, I think it was 11, right? Close to the top 10. But you would have used that pick on another position that could have helped you out in another spot. After the Huddle is back with another $5 super chat. Thank you. I'm going to drink my Red Moon Scotch Ale for this super chat. After the Huddle says, we talked about this on air last night. Darnold wanted to be with O'Connell because of their relationship, but does he stay if he's offered, say, $15 million? No, I don't. I mean, look, it would depend, ATH. It would depend on what kind of offers Darnold gets from other teams, what other teams are looking for quarterbacks, how competitive is the offer. If Darnold continues to play like this, he ain't signing for $15 million. No shot. Like, Darnold has legitimately been one of the better quarterbacks in football through the first month. If it's a flash in the pan, it's a flash in the pan. But if the next 3 quarters of the season look like the first quarter of the season, he's going to get paid. Whether it's a franchise tag or it's something else, he is going to get paid. All right, let's jump to another $5 super chat. Justin TF, a Patriot. What's your favorite brewery? Huge craft guy. Went to Asheville, North Carolina on 9/21 for my B-Day and went to 28 breweries in 4 days. It is sad what's happening there. I was going to mention that. Asheville, North Carolina, with the storms and all of that. Hopefully, they can get through a very challenging situation. Brutal storm. Took, many lives. You don't see as many lives being taken by hurricanes in, 2024 as you saw with that one. And it was brutal. It's a huge storm. It was vicious. And hopefully people are going to get through that. If you see any kind of charitable action that you can take, if you have the means, do it. Help those people because they certainly need it. It was brutal. 28 breweries in 4 days. I don't know if I could handle that, Justin. I mean, I love breweries. I love beer. I love craft beer, but I'm getting a little long in the tooth to be hitting 28 breweries in 4 days. I mean, maybe if I had an IV with me, maybe I could do it. My favorite brewery. That's a brutal question. It's a brutal question. I have so many places that I've loved that I've gone to over the years. Oh man. In Massachusetts, I have really enjoyed Castle Island. Shoveltown is good. I haven't been to all of them. But I would probably lean towards Castle Island for now. Then in Rhode Island, Narragansett Brewery, probably my favorite. I actually did a whole brewery hop with my brother 2 weekends ago. No, you know what? I might say Berkeley. For Berkeley is probably my favorite brewery in Massachusetts. It's in Taunton because they make great beer. Berkeley makes great beer. I haven't had a beer at Berkeley that I haven't liked. So I'd say Berkeley edges out Castle Island. Rhode Island is Narragansett Brewery. What is it? Live Long. Visited that one. That was pretty good. That's good. Virginia, there's a place called Commonwealth Brewing in Virginia, the Virginia Beach area. Love Commonwealth. There's a place called New Realm, which I really like. Oh, boy. I'm on the spot. I know I'm going to miss some. In Sacramento, out in California, Lincoln, California, a place called Dueling Dogs. Dueling Dogs Brewery. The place was awesome. Obviously, you could take your dog. The flights were like wooden paws. They had good beer. They had a lake in the back. You go there on a nice weather day and you got music out there. Dueling Dogs was awesome. Awesome. I also liked Hillenbrand. I think the best craft beer that I had out in California, and I had a lot of them, One of my favorites was from Hillenbrand, and it was a Mexicali, they called it. It was a Mexican lager, and it was not just a good beer, but they had this margarita salt kind of combination, and they would wrap it around the rim. You throw a lime or two in there. Oh, my freaking goodness. I literally used to buy, my wife and I, Kelly and I, we would buy like a case of it at a time. When we'd go to Hillenbrand, we'd walk out with at least 12 to 24 Mexicalis. It such a good beer. And the rim, the margarita salt rim that they had was just a perfect complement to it. It was great. Appreciate the question, Justin. 28 breweries. What's your favorite brewery? I'm guessing you've gone to a lot of them. All right, let's get to story number 3. Nick Sirianni watch in Philly. So I think Sirianni's teetering a little bit, right? The Eagles are 2-2. I picked them to win the NFC East. I knew that the coaching situation was in flux. All the stuff that happened last year, Philly ran out of steam late in the season. There was a lot of talk about, Sirianni and the coaching staff and the players. And there was a story written, I think it was by ESPN, about how things were kind of falling apart in Philadelphia last year. The Eagles are 2-2, so it's not dead just yet. Thankfully, the Saints, for them, collapsed a couple of weeks ago. But last week was brutal. The Eagles looked completely, utterly, 100% unprepared for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That game last week was embarrassing for the Eagles. It was brutal. And I know they didn't have Brown and they didn't have Smith, but they didn't even compete in that game. And that's on the coach. And Sirianni said as much after the game. And Sirianni, the decisions that he makes on 4th down, every time I watch the Eagles game, it's like there's at least 2 decisions by Sirianni that I'm just scratching my head. And here's the thing with Sirianni. He makes one bad decision, it tends to fall into another bad decision. And the ball kind of rolls down the hill. If it was just one, you'd say, okay, they survived. But it's like one and then another. And then it's like he's almost trying to make up for the prior bad decision with another decision out of desperation, which ends up being another bad decision. Jalen Hurts is not the kind of quarterback that lifts all boats, so to speak. I don't think he's the kind of quarterback that can take mediocrity around him and make it better. I don't think he's that guy, which is fine. He doesn't have to be that guy, but I don't think he's that guy. I don't see it from him. When you look at Philly, what's wrong? Well, they're in the bottom 10 or 11 in red zone offense, so they're not finishing drives. They do have a bend, don't break defense, which is a Patriots term from the Belichick days, right? The bend, don't break. Philly is 30th in the league in opponents' yards per play, but they actually have a top 10 red zone defense. So they're allowing yardage in between the 20s, but they're making it tougher on teams once you get into the red zone. And here's the thing. We talk about Philly right now, and right now the story is Nick Sirianni. Is he losing the team? Is Belichick going to be the head coach of the Eagles, soon or maybe at least in 2025? But here's the thing about the Eagles. Look at the schedule. This is the point in time where they can turn things around. I don't know if they're going to, but 3, 4, 5 weeks down the road, we might feel completely different about the Eagles because they play Cleveland this weekend, and Cleveland is not good. Their offense stinks. So they play Cleveland in Philly. So home game against the Browns. Then they play at New York against the Giants. Giants not very good. Then they play at Cincinnati. Cincinnati has not been great. Then they play a home game against Jacksonville. So, you got Cleveland, the Giants, the Bengals, and the Jaguars, your next 4 opponents. Philly could go 4-0. They could go 3-1. We could easily be talking about a team that's 6-2 or 5-3 after the next month of football. Right smack dab in the middle of, the conversation in the NFC East. So that schedule lightens up for them over the next month. With that said, if the Eagles suck over the next month, if the Eagles, lose 2 or 3 of those 4 games, Sirianni is in deep, 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 deep trouble. Because after those 4 games I just gave you, they've got back-to-back games against division rivals. So they've got to clean up over the next month. They've got to take care of Cleveland. They've got to take care of the Giants. At Cincinnati will probably be tougher. You have to beat Jacksonville and Philadelphia. They should be 3-1, if not 4-0. Because then after that, after those 4 games, they have to go to Dallas, and then they play a home game in Philly against Washington. So then they have back-to-back games against division rivals. So this is their chance over the next month to right that ship. And if that ship does not get corrected, Sirianni's in trouble. And Sirianni likely will not last the season if he can't get through these next 4 games with, 3 or 4 wins. You can't be losing to those teams. Not with the talent that Philly has. Even with some injuries. Not with the talent they have. All right, I remind you, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Every thumb that you hit watching on the YouTube channel helps us out. That's how we beat the algorithm. If you're watching on Twitter, give us a like. If you're watching on Facebook, give us a like. Also, let me know what you're drinking. I got a Red Moon Scotch Ale from Phantom Farms Brewing. Good stuff. By the way, Justin says that he loves Commonwealth Brewing. There you go. Great place. Great atmosphere, too. Great atmosphere. All right, story number 2. The Chiefs are getting thin at wide receiver. So Kansas City lost Hollywood Brown to start the year. Then, of course, last weekend, Mahomes throws a terrible pick. Rashee Rice gets hurt. Mahomes actually hurts him because Mahomes is trying to make up for the bad pick by making a tackle near the sideline. He takes out Rice. Rice still has swelling in the knee. Very interesting. They don't really know what's going on with Rice just yet. Andy Reid said it's not good almost immediately, but they haven't said it's an ACL. He went through some testing. They're going to do some further testing. The latest is that he's going to see a specialist next week to check the severity of the knee injury. So you look at Rashee Rice, he might end up being out for the rest of the year. We'll see how his visit to the specialist goes next week. Current wide receivers for Kansas City. Xavier Worthy, right? From Texas, first-round pick, super fast, talented guy. Sky Moore, who has not worked out. Justin Watson, who's, an okay 3. Mecole Hardman, who has not worked out. And Juju Smith-Schuster, who's pretty much on hole 17 of his NFL career. So not a ton of talent there at wide receiver right now without Rice, without Hollywood Brown. We'll talk about Kelsey in a minute. But Patrick Mahomes, I feel like because Kansas City has won, and, they won last year when people were wondering whether or not they were going to fall apart, and they found their way. Great job by Andy Reid. They found an identity. They made it work. They end up winning a freaking Super Bowl, right? That's how good Mahomes is. But he's been off to a slow start. And I feel like it's been a little bit under the radar because he's Mahomes. But he's 18th in passer rating. He's thrown the second most interceptions in the league so far. He's got 5 picks. And I always like the completion percentage over expected stat. People that watch my Monday, Wednesday, Friday pod about the Patriots at 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, they know about that stat, right? The completion percentage over expected. What was the expected completion percentage? And did the quarterback fall short of it, or did he exceed it? Mahomes is 22nd in the NFL in completion percentage over expected, and he's a minus. So he should be completing more passes than he is. So, 18th in passer rating, second most interceptions. That CPOE is not very good. And you might say, well, is he getting pressured? He's not getting pressured. Mahomes has faced the fourth lowest pressure rate in the league. So the offensive line's doing a pretty good job of pass protecting. Mahomes has not played well. And again, it's Mahomes. Am I worried? Of course I'm not worried. Guy's the best quarterback right now playing in the league. Right? So I'm not worried. I'm just telling you, he's been pretty mid through the first, 4 games of this season. Through the first quarter of the year, Mahomes has not been Mahomes. And Travis Kelce has not been Travis Kelce. He had a pretty good game last week, They force-fed him a little bit, but the first 3 weeks, he was MIA. So he's had one good game out of 4. And, of course, there's pressure because, can they do what hasn't been done and blah, 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 blah. Can they win another championship? And the more this goes on, the more pressure will be on Reed, the more pressure will be on Mahomes, the more pressure will be on Travis Kelce. If they don't trade for a wide receiver, which is possible, the defense has to play well because, you got Steve Spagnuolo. You got to get as much out of that defense as possible. So Kansas City in an interesting situation, interesting spot. All right, let's get to story number 1. And, of course, all of you know, I would imagine, if you're NFL fans, what story number 1 is. Story number 1 is an easy story. Easy story this week. And it's Davante Adams. Davante Adams, he wants out. He's not happy in Vegas. Vegas knows it. Everybody knows it at this point. And so that relationship in Vegas is dead. It is dead. And I feel like as soon as Derek Carr was traded or let go, that started the downturn. As soon as Carr was told, you're done here in Vegas, that's it. I felt like that's what really turned things around with this relationship rather quickly between Adams and the organization, because Davante went out to Vegas because he wanted to play with Derek Carr. They played together in college. He wanted to live out there in Vegas. And then all of a sudden, the first year they're together, Vegas quits on Derek Carr. And I think Adams was looking around going, wait a minute. And if you're Adams, if you want to quit on Derek Carr, that's fine. But you better have somebody better to replace him. And the Raiders, what are they doing at quarterback, right? I mean, they say goodbye to Carr. That certainly makes Adams angry and disappointed. And then he's left playing with, was it Aiden O'Connell and then Gardner Minshew? And Adams is looking around going, wait a minute. What the hell? Like, I'm in my 30s now. I came here to play with my guy, Derek. You guys decided to chop him off at the knees. And then you didn't replace him with anybody that's better than him. So why am I stuck in this situation? He wasn't very happy last year. Not happy this year. So that relationship is dead. It's done. And Adams is in win now mode. He doesn't want to go to a bad team. He's not interested in a bad team, okay? The Patriots are 1-3, and they're in desperate need of a number 1 wide receiver. They got tons of money. They got picks. He's not coming to New England. Why would you go to New England? He's going to be 32 years old in December. He wants to play with Jacoby Brissett for a team that's 1-3 and has stunk out the joint the last 2 weeks? No. So he's looking for a winner. It just feels inevitable. It feels inevitable, and I know that the reports are out there. It feels inevitable that he ends up with the Jets. His buddy Aaron Rodgers. You got a desperate head coach in Robert Saleh after last week's brutal game. The Jets are all in. They're all in with Rodgers. Rodgers is an unrestricted free agent after, the 2025 season. So you got 2 more years with Aaron Rodgers. You got to make the most of it if you're the New York Jets. And if you bring Davante Adams in, it makes sense, right? You now have Garrett Wilson and Adams. That's a killer 1-2 combination. I don't know if it's going to make the Jets a Super Bowl favorite or a true contender in the league. But if you're the Jets, you're at the point where you got to do anything that you can to make your team better, to make your team more talented. Because, again, you got 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, and you can't swing and miss on that. So I expect him to be a Jet within the next week or 2. Does it happen? I don't know. The New Orleans Saints are compelling. They got a ton of cap issues. Can they make the cap work? Can they figure out a way to bring in Adams? But obviously, again, the relationship with Derek Carr makes a lot of sense. And if you could put Adams along with, Shaheed and Olave and Kamara and Taysom Hill, and I know Taysom Hill's got some fractured ribs right now, but the Saints, that they've got a nice assortment of skill position players. And if you add Adams to that, it's a pretty good offense. That's a pretty good freaking offense in New Orleans. And defensively, The Saints have the best red zone defense in the entire NFL right now. Another intriguing spot is Washington. They got $25 million in space, so they can bring them in. The NFC East looks wide open. Dallas hasn't been great. We just talked about Philly. The Giants aren't good. Jaden Daniels is playing some great football. You know, you give him Davante Adams to go along with Terry McLaurin, and now all of a sudden that Washington offense is even more dangerous. So Washington is a very interesting spot. I think he ends up with the Jets. Let's go to Romanowski, 316. Don't know why Adams was brought back this season. It's a good question. I think Antonio Pierce wanted to, win, and he's all, we're going to compete, and all pumped and jacked Pete Carroll style. And I think they thought they would be able to compete, but there was talk that they wanted to try to move up and draft a quarterback, and then all the quarterbacks went and they didn't trade up. I agree with you, Romanowski. I would have absolutely traded Adams before this season kicked off. The Raiders' ceiling is it's not very high. Again, he's going to be 32 in December. He was cranky last year. You knew if you got off to a slow start, this was going to happen. I would have got ahead of it. I would have moved on from him. They didn't. Now they got to deal with this. Terry says she was just in Vegas for work. Cool stadium. Yeah, Kelly and I want to go out to Allegiant Stadium for WrestleMania. Yeah, I'm a wrestling nerd. Deal with it. I've been to 2 WrestleManias, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble. I know. It's fine. So, Vegas, WrestleMania coming up. Looking at that. Anonymous jumps in with a $20 super chat. Great show tonight, Nick. Thanks. Thank you, Anonymous. I appreciate you. Another sip of the Red Moon Scotch Ale from Phantom Farms Brewing. Again, this place is in Cumberland, Rhode Island. I might have a best friend that I grew up with whose brother worked there. Might. Great place. Thank you for the 20, Anonymous. Means an awful lot. 618 Racing. I'm guessing talking about Davante Adams wanted to compete just with that quarterback, so it was over by the draft. Yeah, it was over. It was over by the draft. Speaking of over, don't forget to give us that like, the thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching live. If you're watching on demand, you can still hit that thumbs up. It helps us beat the algorithm. Don't forget to throw a comment in. That also helps us fight the algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. The goal is 4,500 subscribers. We're about 150 away. We're creeping closer and closer and closer to that goal. Thanks to everybody who sent super chats. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the game tonight. We've got the Bucs at the Falcons. Interesting game. Should be a good one. So enjoy football tomorrow. I'm back at 3 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube to preview the Patriots and the Dolphins game on Sunday. Till then, enjoy yourself. Be good to each other. And enjoy the drinks. Nick Cattles, Crafts and Kickoffs.